Morning, guys. Happy Wednesday. Yes, I am outside. No, this doesn't count as a nature pill either because we're not supposed to be talking on our phones as we take in nature, but I thought that this would provide a good backdrop today. Since you guys liked that story so much about a little dose of nature going a long way as far as reducing our stress levels. So a couple of things I think you should know today. One is just want to put this on your radar because I forgot that the Kentucky Derby is this weekend, and there is a horse that's favored to win called Omaha Beach. And I thought it was interesting that it's the 145th anniversary of the Kentucky Derby, but also this summer is the 75th anniversary of D-Day at Omaha Beach. And so the last 6 horses that have been favored to win the Kentucky Derby have actually won. So it would be sort of an interesting poetic victory, I guess, if a horse with that name won the Kentucky Derby. So in case you suddenly have an office pool, I want you to know that that's the horse with the top name. Also, just 2 other things before we launch into a larger conversation about hate in America, which I really want to get to. Just 2 things on your radar. One is what's going on in Venezuela. We talked about this yesterday. There were some clashes in the streets of Venezuela as the opposition leader there is challenging the current dictator, Nicolas Maduro. Today looks like it's going to be an even more violent, potentially violent day because Nicolas Maduro, the current dictator, as well as the opposition leader Juan Guaido, have called their supporters to the streets, and the opportunity for violent clashes has increased. It didn't look like from the outside that Juan Guaido had the support that he wanted when he called people to the streets yesterday. So there's going to be a lot of attention on Venezuela and what does it look like today for the future of that nation politically. And then back here at home, just want you to know that there was a conversation between Democrats, top Democrats, and the president yesterday at the White House. It was just those groups. So there wasn't like a ton of Republican lawmakers. In fact, I think the president was the only Republican in the meeting. And they had this sort of light, very superficial, it seems like, conversation about infrastructure spending, because that's something that the Democrats would like and the president has talked about. We don't know any details about this other than the number that was floated out there would be a $2 trillion plan. We don't know how it would be paid for. And a lot of Republicans in Congress would not necessarily like this because of 2 reasons. One, stimulus plans like this often contribute to the federal deficit. And also, there's just a question about whether or not the federal government should get involved in this sort of economic stimulus, any sort of these sort of plans, philosophically as well as practically. So I just want you to know there was a nice conversation that happened in D.C. yesterday, and no one insulted each other between those 2 sides. So I feel like we need to talk about that. So that happened yesterday. Miracles really do happen. Okay. So here's what I want you guys to know. We were talking a little bit about divisiveness in America, and yesterday the alleged shooter, and we say alleged because even though he surrendered to police, this 19-year-old who allegedly committed the shooting at the synagogue on Saturday was charged with murder, among a few other charges. I'm going to get to that in a second. We say allegedly because obviously he's not found guilty of any crime yet. But we were talking a little bit about hate in America and whether or not hate is on the rise. And one of the ways that we talk about that is we talk about it in relation to hate crimes. We talked a lot about it regarding the Jussie Smollett case, for example, in Chicago, where he accused others of attacking him for his political beliefs or for being gay. And one of the reasons why that was such a big allegation was because if that was true, it could be a hate crime. Now, what I want you to know about hate crimes is this. The shooter in the San Diego case, the alleged shooter in the San Diego case, was charged with murder yesterday, and prosecutors are pursuing a hate crime allegation. So what happens is you are never really charged with the hate. We talk about it like that, like hate crimes are on the rise and so-and-so has been charged with a hate crime. But the reality is that you're charged with an initial crime like murder or assault, for example. And then prosecutors can pursue a hate crime or allege that that is a hate crime, which would lead to more stringent or potentially severe punishments. So that's why hate crimes are really important, because if you're found guilty of a hate crime, I mean, they're important for many reasons, but legally, if you're found guilty of a hate crime, then your punishment can be much more severe. There's a federal hate crime law, and then there's state hate crime laws. Most states have hate crime laws, but not all states do. So that's sort of interesting to know as well. So just as when we sort of talk about hate crimes, we're sort of talking about them casually, like so-and-so is guilty of a hate crime, but remember they would be guilty of murder and with as a hate crime and that would be because they were, the crime was committed out of a specific bias towards a group. That bias can be religious bias, it could be gender bias, it could be racial bias, it could be any number of things. And so what's really interesting about this statistically, though, is this is what I want you to know. In the Justice Department, you have this huge, federal agency. You have the FBI. You also have the Bureau of Justice Statistics, which we didn't know that much about until recently. But there's a lot of folks that get up on the news that talk about hate crimes being on the rise. And that's true according to one group of statistics. So the FBI has one group of statistics, and between 2014 and 2017, hate crimes are on the rise according to FBI statistics. Sorry. So hate crimes are on the rise according to FBI statistics. But if you look at the Bureau of Justice Statistics, hate crimes are on the decline. So what's the difference between the two? The FBI takes in crimes. I'm going to move over here. The hate crimes, the FBI takes in crimes that are law enforcement agencies voluntarily submit. So they would say not all law enforcement agencies, like your local police department, may not submit their statistics. They do it voluntarily, depending on, probably even just manpower, So it's not definitive. It's only the people that participate. So based on the law enforcement agencies that participate, hate crimes are on the rise. But it's not all the agencies in the nation. The Bureau of Justice Statistics is taking their information from actual Americans who are responding to a survey based on the census. And so that survey includes how Americans feel whether or not they officially filed a complaint or whether they felt they were they were a victim of a hate crime. So one group, the FBI, is depending on law enforcement agencies. Another group, the Bureau of Justice Statistics, is relying on actual people. And both of those groups have flaws in their data because clearly both are voluntary. So I think that's something that you should know about when people are talking about, hey, hate crimes it's so much worse in this nation. It is worse according to the FBI data, but the FBI data is limited in some ways because we just don't know how many different law enforcement agencies will report this year versus last year. Just give you an example, over the last couple of years, there's, I think, there's been the difference of hundreds of agencies reporting or not reporting. And so that can really affect your statistics. So I hope that's clear. Basically, what I want you to know is that when we talk about these facts, we talk about them as the end-all, be-all. Hate crimes are on the rise in America. Look at this data. It's true according to the data, but the data is limited. And so I want you to know that. I hope that's clear. I know it's a little bit difficult to wrap your mind around, at least it was for me, because of the way that we talk about it so casually. So, again, we talk about people being guilty of a hate crime when they're really guilty of murder plus these hate crime allegations. And we talk about hate crimes being on the rise, but we're really relying on FBI data that is voluntarily submitted by police departments across the country, and not all police departments participate. If we look at another survey, also within the Justice Department, using the same definition as the FBI for hate crimes, but relying on actual people to submit how they feel, it looks like hate crimes decreased in America during the same time period. So, I think you have to consider, these are all different angles of the story. It's sort of like a kaleidoscope. You got to turn it and consider all of them. So I just want you to know that. So there's a little bit of room There's no definitive answer, and there's a little bit of room for conversation. So check out our card on hate crimes today. I'm working on a really interesting card for you guys tomorrow regarding endangered species. I know. It's like we really are taking like a broad brush across the news this week, but I enjoy that, and I appreciate the opportunity to do that for you guys. Let me know if you'd like to hear any more about different stories. Email us info@smarternews.com, or you can direct message us on Instagram or any social media. Have a great day, guys. I'll talk to you later.